that it's delight to see women in the leadership role in this sector, in our sector. For us at Islamic Leaf, gender equality is a paramount for our success in development efforts. Unless we make sure that the girls and women have the same rights as boys and men, no country, no community will reach its full potential. So, what do we do to achieve that full potential? I will focus on some key messages today. First, success in achieving gender equality starts from making sure that the girls are in the school, they stay there, they learn, and they step out of school fully confident in their skills and capabilities. Unfortunately, we still have a significant gender gap in education. Millions of girls over the next years are going to be missing this most valuable of assets, building their skills and capabilities. We have a strong focus on making sure that the education is the priority and the girls find their pathways to it. Building block by block, I can say proudly that today with our efforts, thousands of the girls where they belong are in school. And I want to give credit not so much to us, but to the mothers and the girls themselves for preserving in one of the most difficult environments. My second point on the issue of gender equality concerns economic empowerment. Economic empowerment starts from empowerment simply. Through our efforts, we are supporting women to set up their businesses, gaining access to bigger markets, and learning skills for life. Another commitment for us is to give girls and young women the chance to decide what to do or not to do. Currently, together with UNICEF, we are preventing early child marriages so they can study and make their own decisions about life. Under Empower Project, we address the deep-rooted challenges faced by women and the girls through faith perspective by engaging religious leaders to advocate on pressing issues such as girls' education, early child marriages, and women empowerment. We owe a safer and equal future to our children, to our grandchildren, to leave for them a world in which everybody has the opportunity and the right to be who he or she wants to be. So once again, I would like to extend my thank you to everyone who are joining this event today and everyone who is here. We all came together for a cause which is very important for our country, which is very important for our generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shirazi, for your inspiring words and for highlighting the vision behind the Empower project. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present a brief video documentary offering an insight into the Empower project. This documentary highlights the transformative journey of communities empowered through education and resilience by integrating faith perspectives. So without any further delay, let's begin the video.
د حرکت کولو سره یو ځل بیا ماته د ازادۍ
So we are about to start the video of Empower project.
Many women were very reluctant and skeptical to participate and be part of this project. But as the project grows and progressed, they realized that it is for them. It is for their education. They came to know about their rights and their educational necessity. And after that, they become a major part of the project.
बहुत सी ख़वातीन ऐसी हैं जिनको उनके राइट्स मालूम हैं, लेकिन वो मजबूर हैं, उनको वे नहीं पता कि हमने किन ज़राए से जाके अपने राइट्स के लिए किन प्लेटफॉर्म्स पे आवाज़ बुलंद करनी है। इस्लामिक रिलीफ की वो जो ट्रेनिंग हमने एम्पावर पे की थी, तो उसका ये बेनिफिट हुआ कि मैं जब वापस आई इस्लामाबाद से, तो मैंने सोसाइटी में और स्पेशली मदारिस में जाके बच्चियों को सेशन देना शुरू कर दिया। तो मैंने उन ट्रेनिंग से जो कुछ सीखा था वो मैंने अप्लाई किया सोसाइटी में।
कोई मुआशरा भी उस वक्त तक तरक्की नहीं कर सकता जब तक कि उसमें बच्चों के हुकूक न हो, ख़वातीन के न हो। या इस्लाम ने किसी को ये हक़ दिया है कि वो किसी लड़की या खातून से ये हक़ छीन ले कि वो पढ़े ना, वो स्कूल न जाए, वो कॉलेज न जाए। किसी को इस बात का इख्तियार नहीं है।
इस एम्पावर प्रोजेक्ट को ज्वाइन करने के बाद जो मुझे प्रो कम्युनिटी इफेक्ट्स नज़र आए हैं स्पेशली कम्युनिटी के लोगों में, वो ये है कि दे स्टार्टेड टू सेंड देयर डॉटर्स टू स्कूल। डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस में काफ़ी हद तक कमी आ चुकी है, जिसको हम ख़त्म तो नहीं कर सकते लेकिन रोक सकते हैं।
When Islamic Relief announced their project, we clearly saw all the women enthusiastically ready to participate in this program, and this actually is a sign that we are ready for this change now.
What an amazing journey it has been. The Empower project has made a real difference in strengthening communities and promoting gender justice. Ladies and gentlemen, to provide us a deeper insight into the Empower project and its impact, I now invite Ms. Afshan Jamal, Child Protection and Youth Development Specialist at Child and Women Development Program of Islamic Relief Pakistan. Ms. Afshan has played a key role in advancing this project with commitment and a clear vision. Please welcome Ms. Afshan Jamal on stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today here. I'm going to start by sharing an inspirational and motivational story which has stayed with me for some time during this inspirational and transformative journey of Empower project during last 3 years. I'm going to talk about Noor. By the way, Noor is not the real name of the girl. I'm going to share the story of that girl. So Noor is one of the sheroes we have come across during this journey of last 3 years. Noor was just 13 years old when she got married, and her parents actually, they were unable to afford her education and other needs. So they married her off at an early and tender age when she was unable to comprehend life and what is a family, how to take care of a family, what is married life, and all these things. So she married off, and soon after marriage, in early years of her marriage, she became mother to 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. And after some time, in early years, she got widowed. Unfortunately, life was not the same for her, and she faced a lot of domestic violence and challenging situation, threats from her in-laws, and finally they sent her back to her parents while snatching both of her sons. When she came back to her parents, they threatened her to take away the daughter as well. Noor was so young, she was totally shattered. She was unable to cope up with the situation, and she had no idea what was going on in her life and how to manage that situation. Unfortunately, she was not educated, she didn't have any skill, and there was no one in her family who could have guided her to manage that situation and that stress at that time. But luckily, she got connected to a neighbor who introduced her to a women's self-help group established and formulated by Islamic Relief Pakistan. And then she got connected to so many other women who were going through difficult situations in their lives. She shared her life story with all those women, and she also came to know about their life stories, which gave her a lot of confidence and courage that there are other women, and she became a part of that support group through that neighbor. She also became aware of a psychosocial support service, and she got the therapy, which helped her gain the confidence and gain her lost self-esteem. So she was also introduced to the laws. She also came to know about her rights. And she now knows that how she can regain the custody of her children. And now she is planning to go to the court and regain and reclaim the custody of her sons. Noor is now full of hope, and the good thing is that she doesn't see herself as someone who is just a survivor of all this, but she sees herself as the protector of her children. She wants them to, she wants to have her children back and make her educated, as she couldn't get education herself. And she also is a source of support and inspiration for so many other women in the community who are in similar situations. Islamic Relief has transformed thousands of lives and thousands of Noors during past 3 decades in Pakistan, and I have witnessed many such transformational stories and life histories during past 2 decades, and this is the reason, this is the only thing which keeps me going every day. So let's take a look at the project, which was implemented in 2 countries, Pakistan and Indonesia. And it started back in 2022, and it focused on 2 elements. One is the promotion of girls' education, and the other one is prevention of domestic violence. So the project focused on these 2 elements on 2 different levels. One is raising awareness about these things at community level while engaging a wide range of stakeholders, and the other one was raising awareness and sensitizing all the policymakers. Moving forward on to the geographical focus of the project. The project was implemented in 3 provinces and of course AJK, where it supported thousands of families, and Islamic Relief Canada office has been kind enough to support this initiative with Pakistan office. So a big thank you to our Canada office and supporters in Canada who have made it possible. So let's have a look at the range of stakeholders we engaged during this journey. So there were faith leaders, there were relevant state departments like FOSPA and the Women Protection Authorities, Social Welfare, Child Protection Authorities, academia, youth, community groups, community forums, and civil society, of course. Then the activities of the project involved capacity building of the stakeholders, particularly faith leaders, and the community groups and forums that were formulated during this whole process. Awareness raising sessions and campaigns were also organized at community level, and then there were local faith level committees which were formed under this project, and referral mechanisms were also established, and the communities and particularly those women who were marginalized were introduced to the support mechanisms and service providers who were out there to support such women. International days were also celebrated, and then there were some activities. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So these are some of the glimpses from the capacity building programs for the stakeholders. Then there were, next slide please, capacity building of youth groups and community members on gender rights. You can see some young girls. And then there were some cross-provincial meetings of stakeholders in all 3 provinces and AJK. There were some radio talk shows as well on the importance of girls' education and also the prevention of domestic violence. Around 800 kits with educational materials were distributed among girls who were marginalized and who were struggling with their education and related materials. Moving forward with the way forward and how we can capitalize on Empower and what is the way forward, we came across with some opportunities. And I think the capacity building of stakeholders can play a really great role in all this journey, and if we want to build and expand on it. So I think we need to focus more on the capacity building programs for these faith leaders at a community level as well as on our institutional level. Community-led initiatives always play a great role when you engage community, when you engage those community representatives, those stakeholders within the community. I think that makes a huge difference. And then, of course, the referral pathways and the support mechanisms, strengthening those service providers, support mechanisms within the community can help prevent those issues at community level. I think one of the challenge we saw that, and we need to build on it and focus more on that challenge in the next phase, is that we need to have significant investment in community sensitization and outreach. So that is the way forward for Empower, and I'm really happy to share the success and celebrate it with all of you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Afsha, for the detailed presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest of honor, Ms. Rabia Javeria Agha. Ms. Rabia is a dedicated advocate for human rights in Pakistan. As chairperson of the National Commission for Human Rights, Ms. Agha has been a strong champion for women and vulnerable communities. I would request Ms. Rabia to come join on stage and deliver the keynote speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dr. Asif Shirazi, Islamic Relief, Ambassador Farhat Aisha, Ms. Hiba, my friends Fahmida, Saman, Professor Qibla Ayaz, and Afsha for a very inspiring story. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. The journey that we all make as women towards gender equality in Pakistan is really a relentless battle. It's a struggle for justice and for dignity in a society where there are deep-rooted inequalities, and these inequalities continue to impact us. आप लोगों को शायद याद हो, last year there was a video went viral of the brutal abuse and the rape of a young couple by a property dealer known as Usman Mirza. और जब लोगों ने ये video देखी, they were horrified at what that couple had to go through. And the victims very bravely ventured to court. Magar 6 mahine ke baad, 6 months after the step that they took to go to court, the couple resiled. Uska matlab hai ki they didn't compromise, they retracted their statement. And they lost the courage. तो उन्होंने ये कहा कि ये तो उस्मान मिर्ज़ा था ही नहीं, ये इसी ने तो कुछ नहीं किया हमें. And when forensics proved otherwise, कि this was the man who is in the video, तो फिर उस औरत ने मुड़ के कहा कि ये तो मैं ही नहीं हूँ, मेरे पास तो ये कमीज़ है ही नहीं, ये कलर की कमीज़ है ही नहीं. They backed off and retracted. It was at that point that the National Commission for Human Rights we have a very strong act, and under Section 9 of the act, we went to court. And हमने कहा कि हम इस केस में पार्टी बनेंगे, बशर्त कि वो कपल रिजाइल हो गई, वो कपल अलग हो गए, हम इसको परस्यू करेंगे और हम चाहते हैं कि that justice prevails in the circumstances. And if it was not for the National Commission of Human Rights taking that proactive initiative, Usman Mirza and 4 others who've got life imprisonment would today be walking free. Now, जब हम उस्मान, thank you. तो जब हम उस्मान मिर्ज़ा की कहानी में बात करते हैं, ये कोई अनोखी कहानी नहीं है. It's not an isolated case. In Pakistan, we have approximately 11 cases of rape per day, and yet only 60% of the women who face that abuse, which is the most violent humiliation a woman can go through, of that only 60% go to court. And of that 60%, 86% resile. वो या तो खौफ होता है, या सिस्टम होता है, या जो आप बात करते हैं एजुकेशन की नॉलेज. There are numerous factors, but the fact exists that 86% of women resile and they retract their statements. एक और कहानी बताऊं, काश कि मेरी कहानी इतनी अच्छी होती जितनी नूर की कहानी होती. एक रात हमें फ़ोन आया एक औरत का कि मेरी पड़ोसी के ऊपर बहुत तशद्दुद हो रहा है, एंड शी इज़ बीइंग वायलेंटली बीटन, कैन यू हेल्प अस. तो हमने पुलिस भेजा, वो बच्ची को अपने पास ले आए, हमने उनको शेल्टर में डाला, और मैं सुबह को जाके उनसे मिली. एंड आई सेड व्हाट्स हैपन. और उसके बदन पे कोई जगह नहीं थी जहाँ उसने बंदे ने मारा. वो कोई शराब भी था या क्या था, उसको मार पीटता था. एंड we said you have to leave him, and you can't do it. And वो उसके माँ बाप, they're from a very humble background. She was married to a very rich man, and so we ran around. We got a lawyer, a pro bono lawyer, and I went to court with her parents. और parents ने कहा देखें बाजी हमारे पास कुछ ख़ास नहीं है, मगर हम अपनी बेटी को संभालेंगे. हमारी बेटी के पास शी वॉज नॉट एजुकेटेड, कोई डिग्री नहीं है, कोई नौकरी नहीं है, मगर हम अपनी बेटे को दाल चावल खिला कर सब विल हेल्प हर. एंड व्हेन आई वेंट टू कोर्ट, एंड द हस्बैंड वाज वेरी इन्फ्लुएंशियल मैन, एंड ही हैड बिग कार एंड गार्ड्स एंड ऑल दैट. और जब वो अदालत के सामने खड़ी हुई तो उसने कहा कि नहीं, मुझे कुछ नहीं हुआ, मैं तो सीढ़ी से गिरी थी. तो वी वर ऑल टेकन अबैक कि ये कौन सी कहानी है. उसने कहा नहीं जी, मैं तो सीढ़ी से गिरी थी. I said, chalo, chodo, she's decided what she wants to do, and we went home. And about a year later, I incidentally met her at a wedding. And I went up to her and I said, tum theek ho? And she lifted her arm up and it was full of bruises. And I said, मैं क्या तुम्हें कह सकती हूँ, मैं क्या कह सकती हूँ. So when you are faced with this kind of trauma, what will it take for you to say कि भाई बहुत हो गया? The barriers that we face in Pakistan, and I have to acknowledge civil society, I have to acknowledge commissions, UN Women, the Women's Status on Commission of Women, who are working really hard to give women their space. But the barriers are, it's a male-dominated court system. आप कचहरी जाए तो आप खुद घबरा जाएंगे. Courtrooms are hostile, they are not women-friendly. Trials take very, very, very long. An average time for an FIR is about 23 days. अब जिस औरत के ऊपर कुछ तशद्दुद हुआ है, वो कैसे चाहेगी 22-23 दिन वो किस सिस्टम में रहेगी? पैसों की ज़रूरत है, ट्रांसपोर्ट की ज़रूरत है, इन्वेस्टिगेशंस आर फ्लॉड. और जब हम फोरेंसिक की बात करते हैं तो फोरेंसिक की सैंपल्स जो होते हैं वो प्लास्टिक की थैली में डाल के पुलिस वाला अपनी मोटरसाइकिल पर डाल के ले जाता है. अगर वो गिरे कुछ हो, the systems are not in place, and that is why survivors get crushed. And they force themselves or whatever to either retract their statements or to just adopt a code of silence. अब मैं फिर से थोड़े से आपको फिगर्स बताती हूँ. ये तो फिगर स्टैंडिंग कमेटी में भी नोट किए थे कि 2005 साल में हमारे पास 22 जेंडर बेस्ड वायलेंस के केसेस हैं, मगर इतनी केसेस उसमें से सिर्फ 18% प्रोसिक्यूशन जाती हैं और कन्विक्शन है 0.3%, यानी कि कन्विक्शन तो ना कहने के बराबर है. when you report a crime also, a crime as violent as domestic violence or as violent as rape, it is very difficult to report it to a policeman who's a male. Pakistan, unfortunately, we only have 1.5% of the police force is women. So when you tell your story, you are re-victimized. You have to relive that story. It becomes even more difficult. And this is also the case that is in cybercrime. Largest 90% of cybercrime cases are women. And yet in the cybercrime, अभी FI ने कुछ कोशिश की है ज़रूर कि औरतों को लाए, मगर सब मर्द हैं. जब आप अपनी कोई फेक डीप पिक्चर दिखाएंगे तो आप कैसे दिखाएंगे एक मर्द को? आपके ऊपर री-विक्टिमाइज है, आपके ऊपर और ट्रॉमा होगा. So we have to look at making systems, facilitating systems that are better for gender reporting, for genders to come forth. The same thing is the thing when you talk of domestic violence. A majority of women do not report domestic violence. And when they go to the police, a majority of the police turn around and say कि भाई ये तो घर की बात है, घरेलू बात है, इसमें हम नहीं दखलंदाजी करेंगे. We are not going to interfere. It is a family matter. But it is not a family matter. It is a human rights matter. National Commission for Human Rights, we have been lobbying very hard for the passing of a bill on domestic violence in Islamabad, which it is shameful that a capital city does not have a law on domestic violence. और एक बहुत अच्छी जजमेंट है जस्टिस अनवर की फेडरल शरीयत कोर्ट की, जिसको हमने ट्रांसलेट किया और हमने आगे बताया, और हमने शेरी रहमान हु इज़ द प्रपोजर ऑफ द बिल उसको भी बुलाया कि टॉक अबाउट domestic violence. And कहीं इस्लाम में इजाज़त नहीं है कि आप अपनी बीवी को मार पीट करो. तो this judgment and this knowledge and this understanding कि Islam is a religion of Rahman Rahim, it is a religion of kindness, not of beating your wife. And yet, sadly, we have not yet seen the legislation of the domestic violence law in Islamabad, although in the other, I must say, that in the other provinces it does exist, although it is a bit sluggish in implementation. हमारे पास National Commission of Human Rights पे we received about 8,000 cases we've resolved in our time, of which approximately 50%, 4,000 cases deal with women issues. We have a judicial capacity, we can resolve cases, we can also refer cases, we can intervene in a court proceeding, we can visit an area of detention. तो हमारी कोई 4,000 केसेस हैं औरतों के बारे में. And we've also been helping women to register an FIR in a case of domestic violence. If they come to us, we help them in doing this. और मज़े की बात है कि just one of the facts that we came across was that पंजाब पुलिस में जब हमने पूछा था कि डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस का जो एक्ट है जो आपके पंजाब में 2021 में बना है, how many cases have been registered under the Domestic Violence Act? And we found out that there was 0. Not a single case had been registered under the act, which has been now 3 years in existence. And interestingly, in that same period, since the act, we were able to find 44 cases a month on social media. So that domestic violence is taking place, but they are not going to the law enforcement, they are not going to the courts, and they're certainly not pursuing it under the law. So, I'm being so thirsty. पानी मिल जाएगा थोड़ा सा एक ग्लास. So another example is जब हमारा Domestic Violence Act सिंध में हुआ था, उसमें the act was passed in 2013, 6 साल के बाद एक conviction हुई, 6 साल. और जो वकील थी सारा मलकानी, उसने कहा कि जब मैं when I was in front of the court, जब मैं कोर्ट के सामने खड़ी थी, तो जज ने कहा भाई मैं I am constrained because of the law to pass the judgment, मगर मैं इसके खिलाफ हूँ. ये घरेलू मसला है और मैं इसके खिलाफ हूँ. And although I am principally against the law, but because it's the law, I have to do it. So Pakistan has done some good things. We've done the Anti-Rape Investigation and Trial Act. The commissions are good. They are working at full capacity. But we need to empower women further. At the commission, we are trying to advocate to the government that you need to streamline prosecution. देखिए, जब ये उस्मान मिर्ज़ा का केस था, हमने प्रोसिक्यूशन वालों को बुलाया, सबको बुलाया, हमने कहा ये क्या कहानी है कि ये औरतें रिट्रैक्ट होती हैं. तो आपके पाकिस्तान में विटनेस प्रोटेक्शन प्रोग्राम्स हैं, मगर आप लोग इस्तेमाल क्यों नहीं करते? So we found out that in none of cases of domestic violence, sexual abuse of women, Pakistan, we don't use the witness protection. So obviously, नाजिम जोकियों का केस याद है, वो बेचारी उसी जगह में रह रही थी, उसी गांव में रह रही थी. How can a single woman who is uneducated, and I'm glad you're talking about empowering and educating, how is she going to fight the system? You have to use witness protection and get them. Courts have to be sensitive. Law officers have to be trained on how to handle sexual violence. Because देखिए, ये औरतों का मसला नहीं है, this is society. We cannot stand here comprising 50% of the population and not have the quality to be able to call out injustice, to call out abuse. हमारे साथ ये हुआ है, and we need to call that out. There has to be a time when we can say, okay, enough is enough. We need to have justice. We need to ensure society where we are equal. So I'd like to again thank everybody, these organizers, for talking about this very important issue. And not just talking, but going ahead and empowering, because जब तक औरत में ताकत नहीं आएगी, उसको इल्म नहीं देंगे, आप उसको empower नहीं करेंगे, financial independence, inclusion नहीं देंगे, तो वो औरत बिल्कुल मजलूम रहेगी और उसमें हिम्मत नहीं होगी कि मैं आगे खड़े होकर अपने जो भी accuser या जो भी perpetrator उसको आँख में देख के कहूँ कि मैं जा रही हूँ अदालत. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yes, and of course for highlighting the importance of gender justice. Ladies and gentlemen, next we'll have an engaging panel discussion on the topic, as you all know, integrating faith perspectives for gender justice and transforming lives. I'm happy to be your host for this session and to moderate the conversation with our esteemed panelists. Now I would like to invite our panelists on stage. First of all, I would like to invite Ms. Fahmeeda Khan on stage. She is a gender and development specialist at UNICEF with over 23 years of experience. She has focused on addressing inequalities, challenging harmful gender norms, and removing barriers. Her work covers areas like community programming, human rights, violence against women and girls, maternal health, women empowerment, peace and security, and conflict resolution. Please welcome Ms. Fahmeeda on stage. Next, we have Ms. Saman Ehsan. She is our portfolio manager for ending violence against women, governance, and human rights at UN Women. With education and experience in Pakistan, Canada, the UK, and Switzerland, she is passionate about gender and youth issues. She has worked in this field throughout her career and has been with UN Women Pakistan since 2018. Please welcome Ms. Saman Ehsan on stage. Next, we have Professor Dr. Qibla Ayaz. He is a renowned Islamic scholar and advocate for peace, promoting interfaith and intrafaith dialogue. He was the chairman of the Council of Islamic Ideology from 2018 to 2024 and has supported causes like women's empowerment, polio eradication, and fighting extremism. Dr. Ayaz has also served as Vice Chancellor of 2 major universities and is currently a member of Pakistan's Shariat Appellate Bench and the KPK Task Force on Higher Education. He has received Sitara Imtiaz and other esteemed awards for his contribution. Dr. Qibla, thank you so much for joining us today. Next, we have Ms. Sasha Oliveira. She is the Secretary for the Pakistan Development Program at the Canadian High Commission to Pakistan, where she leads the Gender Equality and Women's Economic Empowerment portfolio at Global Affairs Canada. Thank you so much, Ms. Sasha, for joining us today. Last but not the least, Ms. Barira Hanif. She is a gender specialist at the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives with over 10 years of experience in promoting gender equality. She leads policy development and project assessments with a focus on gender inclusion. At the ministry's gender unit, she works on initiatives like the 5 E's framework and Udaan Pakistan to make gender equality our reality. Thank you so much, Ms. Barira, for joining us today. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us today. And of course, we're going to discuss a very important topic that is integrating faith perspectives for gender justice and transforming lives. आप सबकी participation भी इसमें बहुत ज़रूरी है so that we can have a productive discussion at the end of this this panel discussion. So to start the conversation, I would like to start with Ms. Fahmeeda. Ms. Fahmeeda, how do you see the role of faith perspective in driving behavioral change for gender justice, especially when it comes to women education and ending domestic violence? Yes, please, why not? Sure.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And let me just first of all start by really congratulating Islamic Relief for having this and organizing this a much needed event or a discussion. The question that you ask, my dear, the thing is when it comes to faith as a like a bedrock for this kind of, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to addressing equality or inequalities. Unfortunately, Pakistan is not performing well, and I totally agree with Rabia, but she has actually enlightened us. Pakistan stands 145th when it comes to a global gender gap index. This says a much. When it comes to a Pakistan Demographic Health Survey, I mean, if you notice, 51% of adolescent girls, 15 to 19 years, 51%, they think it's justified of husband hitting the wife. So, like this shows something. This shows that they must have experienced the domestic violence at their homes. They must have experienced that abuse. They must have, felt those scars on their minds, on their bodies, when they have seen their mothers beaten by their fathers as well. If you look into the overall population, the female population is 48.7%. But if you look into the girls, population, it's 22%. The adolescent girls comprises of 22% of the total adolescent population. And out of those, 88% are living below the poverty line. 54% in the upper secondary are out of school. 13.7 million girls are out of school. So this says a lot. 54% girls are anemic. Pakistan ranks 6th when it comes to child marriage, which means 18.9 million girls are brides. And if you have, a child married at an early age, how can you expect a girl to really raise their voice when they have seen abuse in their homes? So this have a lot of intergenerational, we talk about women, we talk about investing in gender equality, but let's also think back and then see that are we really investing in the second decade of life, which is 10 to 19 years? And I think women who are not speaking up because they have not been taught during that period how to speak up when it comes to justice. After 9/11, this is a very, again, the topic is very, very sensitive, but I really would like to highlight. When it comes to 9/11, the Islamic feminism rose, on surface in the different scholarly pieces of work. And then what we have seen that how there has been a dichotomy of thoughts of Islamic interpretation when it comes to women and girls' right. And those who interpret, Qibla Ayaz has been sitting with us, all are men who actually have really catered the voices of women to be heard when it comes to interpretation of different faiths. So faith has played and it has to play a very catalytic role when it comes to really advancing the equality, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to harmony, when it comes to tolerance. We are sitting here, we are all almost converted, frankly speaking. But NCHR, their report and the HRCP report says 90% of women face domestic violence. How many of them have been prosecuted and how many of them had been convicted? This is the biggest question mark on our system. We do not. Masjids used to be the community centers where people used to really sit back during like Hujra times and then have these baitaks around. But they never, this kind of culture is really fizzling out. We are not discussing those sensitive topics because we are afraid. The communities are afraid. The women are afraid. The trans people are afraid. The girls are afraid that if they will question something, might so be a fatwa will come and they will get out of that circle of Islam. The thing is, are we really having that kind of a culture where the dialogue culture is really inculcated? And that is where, when we talk about empowerment, when we talk about engagement, when we talk about emancipation, how the faith can really help us, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Shia, whether it's Sunni. No, not a single religion talks about beating a wife. Not only beating a wife, emotional, sexual, physical, financial. And think about, like when it comes to women in the labor force. How many men allow women to step out of their houses? Not talking about Islam, like Islamabad or the metropolitan cities, but the rural areas. Are they really willing? But we have seen that the women have stepped out during COVID era because they thought it would be really good to have that economic emancipation. But still, it's only 22% in the labor force. Islamabad, ma'am, as you very rightly mentioned, they do not have ICT. What a wonderful, the judgment that you highlighted, Justice Sayyid Munawwar and then Khadim Hussain Shah. But like before that, they're referring to Surah Mujadala. That is where, like even a Sahabiya who is Hazrat Khawla bint Talba, she actually raised her voice and she went to Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She said, my husband has done this. And that's where, like that was referred in that verdict. But how many of us really read that? Because we left the faith in certain group of people, in the hands of certain people. We do not, ourselves do not understand, and we do not actually read that. So the faith has a very close role. I would just like to end on, like one last thing. When I was working with Catholic Relief Services, it was a Catholic money. I was working on HIV/AIDS, and I went to Shia Madrasa in Hangu. And they said, and I really said, and I said, look, like the Shia Madrasa or the Sunni Madrasa or the Brailwi or the Imam Bargas, they played a very important role when it comes to summons and then when it comes to prevention, when it comes to social justice and harmony. And that scholar asked me one question. And they said, when you design project, where do you put us? And I said, in the risk basket. Because, like when we talk about project and then these are the risk mitigation, we said might so be the religious leaders, why, like they will surge and they will voice their concerns about it. They said, no, put us as a stakeholder. And I'm so happy, Asif Saab, today that you put that as a stakeholder because they are the one who needs to be converted as well. Converted in what way? To really bring that harmony and tolerance, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Christian, whosoever the faith is. But the rights perspective have to be implemented and then inculcated. Nobody has right. And that's where you have to really invest in the second decade of the life of the adolescent girls and boys so they would become your champions so the domestic violence doesn't occur. And it can only occur when you have provided them with the education. So I'll stop here my thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fahmida, for your detailed answer. And yes, you are right that 90% of the women face domestic violence, and it's very unfortunate, and we must end this. And yes, there are men who don't allow women to work. And we need women on leadership positions because we are sitting in 2025 right now. And yes, to make our country progressive, it's very important that women, they have to take the lead. They have to be on the leadership positions. But someone in Pakistan, women and girls are still behind in development areas. What do you think? What are the reasons? What are the gaps that needs to be filled? And especially, do we need to change our approach as an individual, on community level, and on government level as well? What's your take on that?
Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very insightful and interesting discussion. Pakistan has a lot of laws. We have a lot of policies. We have the legal framework. We have ratified the International Conventions on Gender, CEDAW. In the Beijing Platform for Action, this year we are celebrating 30 years since the Beijing Platform for Action was adopted at the 4th World Conference on Women. And at that time, Pakistan had a female prime minister who led the delegation, Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto. So Pakistan was, at that time, a shining light showing the world the way to go. 30 years later, we have all those commitments. Even in our constitution, there's the article of non-discrimination on the basis of sex. But if you look at how those laws, those policies, those international commitments are being implemented, that's where the biggest gap is. So, for example, we will have lots of laws, but we will not have the secondary legislation, the rules of business, that sort of clearly identify what are the steps and what are the mechanisms to implement that law. Where you have rules of business, you have secondary legislation, you don't have financing. For example, one of the very important laws that was enacted in 2021 was the Anti-Rape Investigation and Trial Act, a very comprehensive act that applied to all of Pakistan, with very clear mechanisms of how to prevent, respond to rape, how to do the investigation, the trial, using forensics, a very progressive law. But according to that law, there need to be anti-rape crisis cells in every district. And that's where the financing comes in, that the government has to allocate finances for those mechanisms. There has to be special investigation units to investigate physical sexual assault. So I think that's a major place where Pakistan is behind. And UN Women has been working, we've set up a few anti-rape crisis cells, and we're working with the government, because at the end, the safety, the protection, and the justice of all the citizens is the responsibility of our state. But all of us, the organizations who are here, as Fahmida said, this is all the converted people, the UN, our international partners, the civil society, we're all working to help the state because we're a resource-constrained country. So that's an issue, and again, as Rabia Sahib also mentioned, that justice is not easy for women and girls. So when there is a case of, especially domestic violence, first of all, the women, the girls, they themselves don't realize that it's violence. Like you mentioned, how many women, actually the proportion of women who think that beating a wife is all right is often higher than men, because they have internalized that patriarchy, they have internalized that system. So first of all, if the husband does emotional abuse, financial abuse are not even considered abuse, you know, they're just normal. And even in physical abuse, if it's a light, halka sa thappad hai, kuch nahi hota, you know, zyada koi haddi shaddi tooti hai, that means that it's real violence. So they themselves, they don't realize it. If they realize it, the next step is reporting it. Reporting is low. Ma'am Rabia gave those very horrific percentages of how many women report and how many are actually convicted. So it's very important to really work with all the justice sector actors, the police officials, the investigators, the prosecutors, and the judges also, to build their capacity to understand, you know, what violence is, how it impacts the survivor, make all our spaces gender sensitive, and make them understand that it is not acceptable, not in Islam, not in society. Something that I say often is that the human rights are universal. Human rights apply to everyone. You can't say that, you know, this person is of this age, so the human rights are not applicable. For example, for child marriage, only in Sindh, the age of marriage for girls and boys both is 18. In the rest of the country, the minimum age of marriage for girls is 16. Now, how can you, especially having a constitution that says there needs to be equality based on sex, how can you have this difference? And then when human rights are applied, they need to be applied consistency. We've worked very closely with Qibla Ayaz Saab on child marriage. I'm reminded of that. When he was the chairman of the CII, he was a very progressive and forward-thinking chairperson. And we took a delegation of religious leaders and religious scholars, including females also, to a fistula center in Karachi to show them the harmful effects of child marriage. And after that, all the scholars were in tears when they learnt about how child marriage can impact the health, the well-being, the dignity, you know, every aspect of a girl's life. And at the end, Qibla Saab, and we also had Maulana Tahirul Ashrafi, they gave a joint declaration that child marriage is harmful to the individual and should be prevented as much as possible. So really we need to work with all stakeholders. Religious leaders can be a huge support. If this message is broadcast, as Fahmida said, that masjids used to be a place for discussion, if such progressive messages relating to human rights are broadcast from the masjids, I think that's a way of reaching more and more people who really listen to the khutbahs and who really follow them. So I think really working with, as I said, all the stakeholders, justice sector, faith leaders, government institutions, civil society, working together, we can address the challenges.
Yes, you are absolutely right. It has to be a collective effort, and we all have to come forward and work together to end domestic violence and to promote gender justice. And yes, one thing that you have mentioned is that beating a wife, it's quite normal in a lot of communities. And they always say that it's allowed in Islam. They say it's their perspective. But then again, dialogue is very important, because when we'll talk about the topic, among the communities, they are going to realize that it's not right. We can correct them through dialogue, through discussions. So it's important. तो वो वाली जो बात है ना कि एक थप्पड़ ही तो था या थोड़ा सा मारना जायज़ है. So we need to end this. We need to change the perspective. We need to change their mindset. It's very important, because
Also,
Islam.
Yes,
Please
I
continue.
think from Islam itself, as Fahmida said, it's a matter of interpretation.
Yeah.
So some people have a very rigid interpretation, but the same thing, if you look at the whole context, you can find better interpretations. With CII also, we developed a pamphlet on Islam or Shadi Ki Umar, where some of the concepts of what Islam says about age of marriage were debunked. Like everyone says it's balughat, that when a girl is physically mature, you can marry her off.
Yeah.
But it's not balughat, it's rushd, which means physical, mental maturity, so that the child or person should be so mature that they can sign contracts, they can take care of financial affairs and properties. So maturity does not just mean physical maturity, and this has been analyzed, including with religious scholars.
Yeah, it's very important. You have raised a very important point. Also, Islam is a religion of peace. We cannot, we cannot interpret it, the message of Islam. So it's also very important. Dr. Qibla, at community level, people often support gender justice, but they always complain that their views are not included in the public policy. What are the gaps that needs to be filled, and what do you think? How can we connect community needs with the public policy, and what is the role of religious leaders in your point of view?
Can I come in?
Yes, please.
नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली व नुसल्लिम अला रसूलिहिल करीम अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम वल अस्र इन्नल इंसान लफ़ी खुस्र इल्लल लज़ीना आमनु व अमिलुस सालिहात व तवासौ बिल हक़ व तवासौ बिस सब्र सदक़ल्लाहुल अज़ीम. Very important gathering in which we have representatives from different walks of life, and we have also His Excellency Yahya with us, and a number of others belonging to Islamic Relief and other organizations, on a very important theme, gender justice. My experience and my study teaches me one conclusion, that the role of women has been belittled in the course of human history, because the history of humankind has predominantly been recorded by men. So the men's perspective has been highlighted. In our religion, Islam, the Quranic exegesis, tafsir, has been written by men. So there is a great tilt towards the men's perspective of the things. It is very important that this vacuum must be filled by women. Because the history of humankind and throughout the human experience of faith, women have been very effective in shaping the course of events and the changes in the history. Right, for example, for us, in particularly Judaism, how can we ignore the role of the mother of Prophet Moses alayhi salam, the prophet of all of us, but particularly followed by the Jews. And it is very unfortunate that we have very scarce literature on the role of the mother of Prophet Moses, Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And then in Christianity, very right, Prophet Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, is our prophet. But then who can ignore the role of the mother of Prophet Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, Maryam Bibi alayhi salam? There is a need that we highlight the role of Maryam alayhi salam, a great individual in the course of history, which has very scarcely been addressed by the historians. And then in the Middle East, we see that two streams of races, the Israelites, Banu Israel, and the Ismailites, Banu Ismail, their ancestry goes to two women, Sarah, for the Israelites, the wife of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Hajara for the Ismailites. So how can we ignore Sarah and how can we ignore Hajara, two great women in history? But again I say that history has been predominantly written by men. So these great women are ignored. And then we know much about King Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam. But who knows very little about the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, who together with King Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam, gave humankind a world so advanced in technology and in science and in wisdom. But we know much about King Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam, our great prophet. But how many are there who know about Queen Sheba, Bilqis, a lady of great wisdom, great foresight, and a great intellectual of the time who led a great empire together with King Solomon. What I try to present before you, that it is high time in this age, that we try to highlight, what has been the role of great women in the history of the humankind. Then if we come to Islam, which has been a very controversial faith in the case of gender issues, but the first woman, empowered woman in the history of Islam was the first wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Hazrat Khadija Raziyallahu Anha, the great businesswoman of the time who had employees in hundreds, and she was so enlightened that she kept record of the business. So it means that she was a very educated woman of the time. And then Hazrat Aisha and many others. And the outspoken women of the time who would question the caliphs of Islam in the Masjid Nabawi, in the central mosque, about their rights. And the caliphs had to concede to what they say, because what they said was based on the Holy Quran and on the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So is the case. Yes, there are in Hinduism maybe some problems areas, but then in Hinduism, Ramchandra is the ideal person, the man. But is Ramchandra the only ideal man? No. Sita is also the ideal woman. And Sita is so sacred, so holy, as Ramchandra ji can be in the Hinduism. And if you see, in the Sikh religion, because we are discussing faith, so all faiths should be covered. A great religion, Sikhism, where we see gender equality, because in Gurdwaras, they worship together, men and women. So a great emancipation of women that we see in the Indian subcontinent is, the credit goes to the Sikh faith. So these are aspects that I think should be the takeaway of today's event, faith, integrating faith with gender justice, that faith has great roots for us to build on it and go ahead for a society which is free from gender bias. Now we come to the present situation. There is need of the time, women empowerment, particularly in the economic aspect. Very important area that we need to work together. And for all of us belonging to any faith, these ideal personalities can be in front of us. For Muslims in Pakistan, which is the majority faith, Hazrat Khadija is in front of us. Economically empowered woman. So she is our leader, she is our role model, and I think based on this, Islamic Relief and other organizations can go ahead with very powerful arguments. It's not only economic empowerment, there is a need for social empowerment. There is a need for political empowerment. And I'm glad that Pakistan has special seats for women. Now there is a need that political parties should be educated, that these seats should not be allotted only to the elite women, but women from the far-flung areas should also be made part of the mainstream political activities, so the trickle-down effect is then spread to other areas. We have some ideal countries, like my visits to Indonesia and my learning about Malaysia, where women have been empowered economically, in education, in politics. I visited Bhutan and Nepal. Nepal, a Hindu country, Bhutan, a Buddhist country. But I saw women empowered, part of the activities, in shops, in business, in education. So is the case in other areas. So I hope that there is a great scope. There was reference to the minor age marriages. There is great scope for working, for trying to bring an end to this great problem, particularly in our country, in Balochistan, parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in interior Sindh and the Punjab. And I think my experience with the religious scholars is that as far as was are, trying to make them understand on these religious teachings, is the better way is to expose them to the Fistola Center. It is a very effective experience of mine with the ulama that we took all the members of the Council of Islamic Ideology who had problems with the question of minor age marriages. We took them to Fistola Center, Karachi. Madam Nilofer Bakhtiar and our panelist was also there. And believe me, when we saw the agonies of the minor girls, the agonies and the pain that they had been passing through, and almost all the members of the Council of Islamic Ideology, I saw them tearful. So that was a great takeaway. And back when we went to the hotel, all of them told me that, Mr. Chairman, we need to do something about it. So again, my suggestion is to Islamic Relief, to UNICEF, other organizations, that all those religious scholars who can influence minds, we, instead of big seminars and spending a lot of money on it, we can time after time, and we can take them to Fistola Center, and you will see that there is a great change coming. So these were some of my experiences and interaction with the religious, different faith groups that I think can give us a great space to build on it and work for our further activities in this regard. I am very grateful for Islamic Relief for giving me this chance to share my views with such a distinguished gathering. I thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and highlighting examples from different faiths, Dr. Qibla. And when it comes to Islam, it gives unmatched rights, and Islam truly empowers women. And we have so many examples from our history as well, our Islamic history. There are women who have set really great examples for the women of today's society as well. And yes, we need to work on gender equality. We need to promote gender justice. It's very important. And when I say that it's a collective effort, it's important that all the countries, they also have to come together and work for gender justice. So, Sasha, Canada has been a great supporter for gender justice. But from your experience, how can partnership between countries can help promote and support gender justice, especially in the context of areas like Pakistan?
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me here today. Is this okay? Perfect. So first, maybe I'll talk a little bit about what my understanding of gender justice, beyond it being equal, fair treatment and opportunities and access to resources. I also think we have to acknowledge that it requires addressing and rectifying historical and ongoing disparities and discrimination. So with that in mind, it's obvious it's going to take time. We've been working at it for several years, and it will continue to take time, especially as the world evolves. New technology, there's always things that are going to shake up the world a little bit that's going to require us to keep moving forward. So we need a multifaceted approach, much like anything else, and the involvement of all stakeholders, which I've heard here today from others as well. So I would say as a baseline for development partners like Canada and others that are here in the room, we do need to continue working with countries like Pakistan on kind of like the baseline improvements in health and education and employment, and really, decision-making processes, and specifically getting women involved in those decision-making processes. Because, without the quality equity in those areas, then we're not going to be obtaining gender justice anytime soon. So I would also say that empowerment is also key. So any of the interventions that, whether it's bilateral, multilateral development, it needs and should, moving forward, have an empowerment element to it. And so for us, that's, having access to information, resources, skills building, confidence building, helping individuals recognize their strengths and potential, and empowering them to empower themselves and others. I think that's really key for sustainable development results and for achieving gender justice in the long term. And we should also talk about efficiency. We've been doing development for a long time, and we can be more effective at it. And so I would say we need to have all our interventions have a local ownership aspect to it, which I've also kind of heard here today with the involvement of stakeholders. And I think local stakeholders is particularly important. And for Canada, we tend to work with partners who have some sort of local presence in the communities that we support. And that includes also having the involvement of local support organizations, civil society, and stakeholders. We have, in some cases, traditional and religious leaders. We have couples, so like a man and wife, employers, like you name it. It's very important that we have kind of cover all our bases in terms of who is impacted and who has a role in gender equality. And lastly, for the development community, and I've been in Pakistan for a short amount of time, but I'm really happy to see how closely the development community works, and we complement each other's interventions, so that should continue. And we need to continue advocating together for the rights of women and girls, and challenge gender norms. Of course, by working together, and as you even mentioned earlier, that's really the key way that we're gonna have any progress in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha, for sharing your thoughts. And of course, government also has to play a vital role in, in women empowerment, in gender justice as well. So, Barira, you are representing government here, and government has launched Udan Pakistan program for inclusive development. Tell us more about this program and how it's going to promote and support gender empowerment and gender justice.
Thank you so much for having me on this panel, and I think there is very little left for me to say. But before I move on to the Udan Pakistan and the initiatives that the government is taking around gender mainstreaming, not only within the ministry but also the line ministries, I would like to add to what just Sir said before, and building up on what Fahmeeda said, that history has been hijacked by men, and a lot of you will find a lot of Islamic versions within the socio-economic and cultural context. So when you look at the history, we have very empowered women within, Muslim women who established universities, led armies in the North Africa, within Middle East, and you see that sometimes that the interpretation of Islam has been changed because of the cultural influence. So when you look at the subcontinent, and a lot of scholars, the scholars were usually men, and they used to translate Islam as per whatever suited the men community overall, right? So we have to somehow narrate the Islamic feminism, which Fahmeeda said, which empowers women to run businesses, to educate, to participate in the socio-economic regime. So has not this been translated in Asia particularly? You see women empowerment in Malaysia, you see them see it in other parts of the world, but it's not because of the faith, it's usually because of the cultural issues, the cultural interpretation of the faith. And lastly, when I will come to the Udan Pakistan, government has been very serious about mainstreaming, not only in the context of gender parity or the socio-economic injustice, but also because it is affecting the economic activity of the country overall, with women at 23% of the labor force participation. It is adversely affecting our economic growth. If you want to, as per the target set by the Udan Pakistan, 6% of GDP growth with 60 billion of exports to be achieved by 2030, you cannot do this without half of the population being unskilled, and only 23% in the labor force in mainstream, like what you say, the formal economy. These ambitious targets cannot be achieved through this kind of labor force participation and skill development, lack of gaps in skill development. So what Udan Pakistan is trying to address is it's taking a full spectrum approach, and through economic empowerment and through mainstreaming the women in the workforce, we are trying to achieve the economic targets. So our aim is to improve the labor force participation by 17%, and the target is to improve the gender parity from 0.56 to 1 by the end of 2030, which is a very ambitious target. And we are also trying to empower women through entrepreneurship. We have allocated a specific fund within the ministry, innovation fund, which also supports the women entrepreneurs. And this kind of inclusion actually will have long-lasting effects, because once you empower women, they can, economic empowerment is actually the key, that women can walk out of such situations where they're facing GBV, they're facing discrimination. So the only thing that restrains women from walking out from such a situation is because they're not economically empowered. So the government is taking this economic empowerment very seriously, and through that, we have established also the gender unit within the Ministry of Planning, which was established after the National Gender Policy Framework, which addresses all these issues from GBV to skill development to health access, all of these aspects in that framework, and the gender unit was established as a part of that. And what gender unit is doing is, first of all, it is working on policies as a think tank, as working as, let's say, convening platform for different stakeholders to come and talk about gender policy, gender mainstreaming issues, and we are also working on gender budgeting as well, which means that This year, we will try to incorporate the gender budgeting checklist within the PSDP portfolio, which is around 1 trillion rupees of budget. And we so far did not know that how much of that budget is being allocated for gender development and gender mainstreaming. So from next year, we will also have this data that how much is being spent on women initiatives. And we will also, do some analysis and allocate accordingly in the coming budget. So this is the kind of mainstreaming efforts that the ministry is doing. And the last part that we are also doing is development communications. We have a dedicated department working on the development communications. So what we are trying to do is changing the behaviors to that and trying to address these social issues through our development communication section as well. So, yeah.
Changing the mindset is
yes,
very important.
Yes, it's very important.
Because even if you allocate a huge budget for economic empowerment, you have to change the mindset of, especially for the men of the community as well.
Exactly.
So this is something very important. Because आज भी घरों में क्या होता है, whenever there are economic crisis, financial crisis जहाँ पर होते हैं, वहाँ पर parents आज भी prefer करते हैं पाकिस्तानी context में कि लड़के को पढ़ा लो, लड़की को पढ़ा के क्या करना है, इसने तो शादी कर लेनी है. So this is the mindset that we need to change, and real change can only come when our girls and women are educated. This is something very important, and we need to focus to change the mindset of our men, of the community as well. So Fahmida, what do you think? That how is it affecting the efforts for gender justice, as there are still women and girls who are out of school? What's your take on that?
Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. So
No, I think it's not working.
it's not working.
Can you please check the mic?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
So, when it comes to the out of school thing, 13.7, as I just mentioned, 13.7 million girls are out of school out of 26.2 million. The thing is, we have been discussing, and Qibla Yasab, thank you for a very enlightening discussion. Out of school, when the Quran itself says Ikra, it says Padho, right? But even then, somewhere our faith is really lagging behind in really ensuring that the girls are also in schools. And that's where we have to really see that how at the socio-ecological level we can really bring the faith element, and also utilizing the existing mechanism at the individual level, at the household level, at the community level, and at the systemic level. And when we talk about systemic level, are we really engaging with the madrasas in that regard? The female madrasas and the boys madrasas. Are we really engaging with the imam bargas? Are we really engaging with the church in this regard? And I was having this discussion with Yasmin sitting back, and they have this CAP survey, and they asked this question: did you ever visit, any of the other faiths, religious worship area? And they said 60%, 70% said no. So, when we talk about interfaith harmony, when we talk about that social fabric, that is enabling environment, providing an enabling environment for everyone to really seek justice. And what is justice? I really talk about the Socrates now when the Greek philosophy comes in. What is justice in real terms? It's basically, everybody treating equally. But the justice for me is different for a justice sitting with the judge sitting in the high court who didn't take a precedent setting by really ensuring that whether he is above law and whether the law is not there to really set the precedent, which, Rabia Sahiba, you were mentioning. The only thing is the out of school girls, how can you expect, again I would repeat my old thing, if you will not invest in the second decade of life, the 54%, those who are out of school from the upper secondary, the dropouts are very high, the educational attainment is low, so it has a correlation within that. How would you expect that girl to really talk about, do not do any kind of a violence with me? Is she aware of her own rights? She's not. So in my opinion, frankly speaking, I would really call upon everyone, the gender apartheid should be criminalized. Nobody at the cost of any gender or sex should be discriminated because she's a girl or she's a boy. And within a girl, which girl are we talking about? The girl who is living in a rural area, the slum area, she is Hindu, she is Buddhist, she is from a religious minority, or she belongs from the family which is very poor. What kind of justice are we talking about when we are not providing opportunity to the girl or a woman living in a far-flung area who never saw the wall of life? Like the school. One last story that I really would like to share. Sadia from Khairpur, UNICEF has been providing that support to emergency in the flood areas, and her school was damaged, completely destroyed. And then with the support of the government, we established and renovated, refabricated the child-friendly space over there. And what happened was that she was getting education in the morning, 7 to like 11 or 12, and then when she goes back, she has 2 kacha rooms in her, like a house, and she was educating 20 more girls, because she saw that she is the one who was deprived of getting education, and she really would like to complete her education. The thing is, if we really would like to bring change, invest in the girls and the boys of the second decade, which is like 10 to 19, they can become our champions. And Sadia was one of them from Khairpur, from Sindh in this regard. So unless we really talk about bringing the girls back to the schools, bringing the boys back to the school, we cannot bring change. By sitting here, we cannot bring change, frankly speaking. We have to really go at the community level, at the village level, and then talk and then bring change in this regard. Because unless we bring change at the individual level, at the household level, sometimes we take refuge कि इस्लाम ये कहता है, but we are not aware कि इस्लाम क्या कहता है, because हमने चंद एक लोगों के हाथ में छोड़ा हुआ है इस्लाम. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fahmida, for sharing your thoughts and for giving great examples from our society as well. So now I think it's also very important to listen, to hear from our audience as well. But before that, we will have a question answer session. But before that, I would like to ask for concluding remarks from all our panelists. Fahmida, you have already given your take it, so thank you so much for that. So Saman, I would like to start from you.
I think everyone who's here knows better than me what we need to do. So empower. The thing about empowering is I'd like to just take the opportunity to speak about empowering. When we talk about power, every human right violation, every form of violence is actually about power. It's about the, usually in most cases, because women and girls are the ones who are at the receiving end, it's usually the men, the husbands, the fathers, sometimes even sons, brothers, and sometimes often random strangers. It could be in your workplace. It's a form of maintaining power. It's patriarchy. The whole system is built around the power of men. So we need to make sure that women and girls are empowered, and for that they need to understand that by just being a human being, they have the power in them. It's the systemic structural barriers that make them powerless and weak. And if they exercise their agency, their power, they can be like the examples you've given, and earlier the example of Noor. They can be agents of change to change the whole society and community, but it's not something that is given to them. Often people say, oh, I didn't stop her, or I gave her her rights. No, no other human being can give you your rights. You were born with them, and they're part of your existence as a human being, and you just need to use them and speak up.
Thank you, Barira. Dr. Qibla.
Very important actually, empowering, and I think that education is the most effective tool to empower, particularly the women. And we have problems in Pakistan and in other areas because of like budget constraints, infrastructure, and this sort of things. But I think with the passage of time, will of the state is important. So we should work for encouraging the state to make women education, education of girls is one of the foremost priorities. And I think that although it is a long journey, but it will happen.
Yes, it will happen. It's a long journey, but we have to be there. Ms. Sasha, what's your take?
Thank you. So maybe I'll end with just a challenge for each and every one of us to look into our own lives and see whether there's ways in which we can improve gender justice, you know, whether it's supporting our neighbors who maybe are struggling to take their children to school, or offering babysitting, etc. You know, if we can help each other, help our colleagues at work, be open to having uncomfortable conversations sometimes when it comes to gender equality, those small little movements, you know, eventually will make a big wave. So it starts also at home with us, and myself included. Thanks.
Ms. Barira.
I would build on Sasha that it's individual efforts that eventually collects into a collective effort. But I think that within our own circle, if we can influence and try to make change agents that can go back in their community empowered, and you know, that will be a chain reaction. And lastly, please stop blaming the government, because government does invest in infrastructures, health. I mean, 1 trillion of development portfolio. Where are the leakages? The leakages are when the projects are being implemented. So it is, I think, if every individual, because one of the aspects of the Udaan Pakistan is ethics. Work ethics are very important, and gender equality, treating everyone with, you know, justice is something that is, I think, ingrained individually. The government can't change your ethics. It's something within yourself. So all those who are responsible, who are engaged in such kind of programs, in development projects, or you know, you are just a community leader or just an individual, if you have the ethics to, you know, engage with people in a just manner, give them their rights, do your work, you know, wholeheartedly and with passion, I think that all those leakages and the gaps that the government is trying to invest, whatever these CSOs are doing, I think they will be materialized. It starts with the individual as well, and then it, you know, propagates.
Yes, we all are responsible. We all have huge responsibilities in this whole process. Thank you so much for all our panelists for sharing your thoughts based on your expertise. Thank you so much for your time. But now we're going to hear from our audience as well. We're going to have a short question answer session, so kindly keep your questions precise so that we can take maximum questions in short time. So yeah, at the back.
My name is Dr. Waheed. My question goes to Fahmida. Thank you, madam, sharing with us very meaningful support that you are extending to marginalized girls of Pakistan. May I ask that how you are ensuring that the girls do not belong to majority faith, the girls who are working in bonded labor agreements, and girls who are struggling to get their identities through with Nadra, how you are ensuring these challenges?
Ms. Fahmida, is it working? Yeah, it's working.
Is it working?
No, it's not working. We're really sorry.
No, that's fine.
Do we have a hand mic? Yeah, now
Okay,
it's working.
now it's working.
Here you go.
Thank you so very much. Sir, your name, can you please repeat your name?
Waheed.
Waheed. Abdul Waheed Saab, the thing is, when it comes to, you know, like UNICEF, I mean, as a UN agency, we do not do the direct implementation. Rather, we work with the government, with the civil society organizations, and then also reaching out to the provincial governments in this regard. How we are ensuring that the women, you know, like the girls from the far-flung areas are reaching back in that regard, really reach out. I'm not saying we are there yet, but there is a lot more, you know, like that needs to be done in order to really reach out to those girls who are, you know, like, or boys who are into the Brooklyn thing. The child labor is the one thing, and that's where the child labor survey will do provide support in really, you know, like generating that evidence. But as far as, you know, like you must have seen, Pakistan is like heavily policy oriented, the legislations and all this, but when it comes to real implementation, that's where the question mark rise. And that's where, you know, like our policy gaps are there. Another thing that I really would like to see, it's not about, you know, like reaching out to those, but how are we really engaging them? The word empower is there, but how would you empower without, you know, like having engaging? I really would like to see more girls in such kind of, you know, like discussions. more boys in such kind of discussions, because they are the one who are the future of this country. So the thing is that we are trying, but there is a lot much that needs to be done. I mean, we are not there yet, to be very honest and frank with you.
Thank you, Ms. Fahmida. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Inayat. I'm from the Department of Government and Public Policy at NUST Islamabad. What a wonderful discussion here, and I'm really happy to learn from Dr. Qibla Ayaz, who has been inspiration for most of us here in this hall. I have 2 points that I would like to highlight. Much has been talked about education of women. And I mean, getting them into school, that's the question that we are trying to address. But one of the things that probably is lacking is, do we really teach them something that really empower them in their curriculum? I mean, of course, those out of schools are different than those who have got, the opportunity to have some education. But as a culture, we also have this, like most of even the educated women, they have this sort of tendency that they have this acceptance for this domestic violence and something like that. So my question goes to Dr. Qibla Ayaz, that to what extent we can address this issue by including the contents in the curriculum right from the first grade till the higher education. That could be one of the pathways for this empowerment. And the second thing is some missing area that I see. It's really encouraging that you consider the religious scholars, madrasas, mosques as a stakeholder. But the unfortunate thing is that today in this hall, we don't see their representation. And there must be some reason why they are not actually coming to these sort of events. But how can we find ways to reach out to them, to include them into this sort of discussion so that they also, are getting awareness about your efforts that you are actually doing. So I think they are being sort of excluded. I know that there might be some challenges because of their acceptance, but we have to think about how to reach out to them, to include them into these sort of sessions. These are the suggestions, so anyone can respond to these. Thank you.
So, Dr. Qibla.
Yeah, very important question. As far as reading contents or syllabus, question is a very pertinent question. I think that as I mentioned in my talk as well, the great personalities, the female personalities, they need to be highlighted in the syllabus. And also, in my opinion, there should be focus on enhancing emotional intelligence because, in different crisis situations or when there is like domestic violence is very social issue. So if they are emotionally intelligent, I think they can face and they can challenge this sort of situation as well. I narrate to you one story. It was last month in the University of Peshawar, and we had a gathering, and one female student asked a question. There was a seminar on police reforms and things like that. And the girl complained that when we go from the department to the hostel, on each step we face harassment. So how can the police help us? And we, the police chief and I, we answered them that, it is impossible that you will find police on every foot and on every step for you from the department to the hostel. But what you should do actually, if there is harassment on the roadside, you just challenge the boy. You just stop and ask why you are doing that. And you will see people gathering around you and supporting you. So these sort of things are very important because, unfortunately, we have been trying to give women impression that you are weak, you are fragile. They are not weak. In our Urdu literature and in Persian, of course, they are called sinf-e nazak, means like fragile gender. They are not fragile gender. They are sinf-e mazboot. They are strong gender. So if we include these contents in the syllabus, I think you will see change very rapidly.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Yasmin Zaidi and I represent an FCDO-funded British Council-managed program called Awaz 2. And the reason I had raised my hand at that time was in response to Dr. Waheed, who had asked a question about how minority girls and women are being included. So I just wanted to say that through this program, which we are implementing in 37 districts of KP and Punjab, and our specific focus is inclusion, which includes religious minorities. And what we found is that it's not that there is a dearth or a scarcity of initiatives by the government necessarily, but that there is a dearth of information and an understanding of how to access those benefits. So if I take the example, what we found with minority women and girls, and I would like to congratulate also the National Commission on Human Rights, because it is their member who took up a case that came from one of the Awaz communities of Hindu women suffering because of the lack of registration of their marriages. They could be abandoned, they couldn't claim custody of their children, etc. Quite heart-rending stories that the member Punjab National Commission took this up and followed it up with the Ministry of Human Rights and others to ensure that an act that was passed, the Hindu Marriage Act that was passed in 2017, still in 2024 did not have any rules of business. So they could not make it accessible. Those registrars who would register the Hindu marriages that would then go into NADRA and would become part of the formal database, etc., that those were not there. And with Awaz help, with NCHR, Ministry of Human Rights, that was taken up consistently throughout last year, and it's just last week that the Punjab cabinet passed the rules, which is a big step forward. So it's different ways. Similarly, we found in KP, for example, there are fewer minorities in KP, but a lot of discrimination across the board in terms of education, employment, etc. How do you work with that, again, with the government to try and ensure? And in that particular instance, I want to say that we have had enough Islamizing of our curriculum. If we only focus on making Islam the central point of reference for our curriculum, then these children who are from minority schools and their teachers, who are mostly majority Muslim teachers, find reasons to create discrimination and bias. Those children growing up hearing, if we put in all these, and I totally agree with you, there are many figures and fantastic examples from Islamic history that can be quoted, but so are there from Hindu, Sikh, Christian history as well. So either quote all of them or just focus on having empowered women irrespective of what their religion was. I think that's a dangerous path that we've already gone down, and we shouldn't be going down that more. So I might be giving. But in coming back to government incentives and schemes, for example, there is a very good initiative by the Punjab government called the Misak Centers, which came out after the incident in Jaranwala last year. The year before. And so those Misak centers, which are there to facilitate Christian communities in case there are any other religious tensions that arise and preempt any kinds of issues arising from them, are very, very helpful and can be taken up. And in Awaz communities, they are taking them up a lot across Punjab and finding it very useful. So there's lots of things happening in terms of minorities, their inclusion, support to them, not enough, I agree, but a lot of it happening. And it is up to us as a majority community in this country to make the environment favorable for our non-minority citizens in different ways. Thank you.
Ms. Barira, would you like to respond to that?
मैं सिर्फ ये बात करूँगी कि why is it important to narrate the Islamic examples, because it is usually Islam that is held responsible for this kind of violence that is prevalent, और usually यही quote करते हैं कि because इस्लाम में है मारना या इस्लाम में ये चीज़ है, तो that's why it's very important to narrate those examples. और I think inclusion की जहाँ तक बात है, yeah, I would completely agree that all the minorities should have been on the panel as well, one of the representatives, and I think there is they should be a part of the stakeholder as well, especially the Islamic centers की जो अभी किसी ने बात की कि उनको भी हम अपने stakeholder की तरह से क्यों नहीं deal करते. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We can't take more questions because of time constraints. The event will continue, but we'll pause briefly for shield distributions ceremony because some of our panelists and guests, they need to leave. And for shield distribution ceremony, I would like to request His Excellency Mr. Muhammad Yahya, UN Resident Coordinator, our chief guest of today's event, on stage. Please put your hands together for Mr. Yahya. And I would also request Mr. Asif Shirazi to kindly come forward. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to invite Ms. Rabia Javeria Agha on stage to receive her token of appreciation. Thank you so much, Ms. Rabia Javeri. Next, I would like to request Ms. Fahmida Khan, Gender and Development Specialist at UNICEF. Mr. Yahya, I request you to kindly stay on the stage. Yes, we need to distribute more shields. Yes. Okay, so Ms. Fahmida. You all can clap. Clapping कर दें. बहुत time इन्होंने obviously अपना दिया है यहाँ पे, and she has shared her expertise with all of us. Next, we have Ms. Saman Ehsan from UN Women. Professor Dr. Qibla Ayaz, former Chairman, Council of Islamic Ideology. Ms. Sasha, I would request you to kindly receive your token of appreciation. Last but not the least, Ms. Barira, I request you to kindly come forward and receive your shield. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Asif and Mr. Yahya, for your time. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, now it's my honor to introduce our guest of honor, Mr. Andrew Bowden, Group Head of Open Societies and Effective Institutions at the British High Commission in Pakistan. With over 20 years of experience, Andrew is a British diplomat and development expert focused on promoting gender inclusion, human rights, democratic resilience, and addressing corruption and illicit finance. He has worked in various countries and is now based in Islamabad. Thank you, Mr. Andrew. You have already joined us on stage, so yes, give your remarks.
Assalamu alaikum. Very good afternoon to you all. Distinguished guests, eminent panelists, what a really interesting conversation and series of ideas, and I feel like I'm standing on the shoulder of giants when it comes to this, and I'm not sure I'm going to add value because I think some of the eminence on this stage has spoken for itself. I'm also very conscious that it's close to lunch, so I'm going to keep this relatively short, not to undermine the importance of the topic, but I'm incredibly grateful to be here, to better understand the work of the Empower Project and its focus on leveraging Islamic teachings to better advocate for the protection of women's rights. Creating these partnerships and opportunities to explore how faith can advance justice, gender justice in culturally sensitive ways is crucial for the success of any behavior change interventions. But as some of the panelists said earlier, it's only going to work if that culturally sensitive, faith-based approach is inclusive of women's voices. Women in Pakistan, I think a lot of statistics said today, we know are particularly vulnerable due to challenging social, political and economic realities. Violence against women and girls in Pakistan is prevalent, sadly, as it is in many parts of the world. The last demographic household survey found 40% of women experience some form of domestic violence, which is huge. The UK works closely in partnership with many of you, with federal and provincial governments, civil society, the UN, as well as through our programs of Avaz. I recognize Dr. Yasmin is here, our goal program to empower and include girls out of school. We support girls' education as well as progressive policy reforms such as the Anti-Rape Trial and Investigation Act and the establishment of Pakistan's first ever sex offenders register, just as some examples. But also, as panelists said, these legislative reforms are only as powerful as they are implemented and resourced. We recognize the importance of faith perspectives in being able to advance women's rights. Through Avaz, for example, we have been working with partners like the Council of Islamic Ideology to better understand reform pathways on issues like child marriage. Pakistan cannot progress if structural barriers to women's empowerment are not addressed. Progressive legislation, access to education for the girl child, and access to the formal economy for women are all incredibly important factors to empowerment. It can sometimes feel a little chicken and egg, but unless social and cultural normative behaviors do not shift, then empowerment interventions will be undermined and vice versa. This is why today's dialogue is so important in understanding how, through an Islamic lens and other faith lenses, solutions can be found that are both culturally sensitive and impactful. So I'm going to stop there and say thank you once again for the invitation and look forward to partnering and meeting many of you to take this all forward, going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andrew, for sharing your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to introduce our another esteemed guest of honor, Her Excellency Ambassador Farhat Aisha. Ms. Farhat is the Director General at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Islamabad, and a career diplomat with over 20 years of experience. She has held various positions in Pakistan's missions abroad, covering both bilateral and multilateral areas. Specializing in peace, security, human rights, and sustainable development, Ambassador Aisha has represented Pakistan at many international forums. She joined the Foreign Service in 2003 and holds advanced degrees in international law and English literature. I would like Her Excellency to join us on stage to share her thoughts.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Honorable Madam Rabia Javeri Aga, the chairperson of National Commission for Human Rights, Honorable Professor Qibla Ayaz, respectable resident coordinator, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to be invited to this esteemed event discussing very important issue, some of the issues which are very close to my heart, and my own growth and my reaching this level. You can see how strongly I believe in the empowerment and emancipation of women and establishing gender justice in our society. I thank Islamic Relief, the country director, for inviting me as representative from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to this important event and organizing this event, addressing the empowering women. I appreciate Islamic Relief for its work towards imparting education and skill for women, providing them with psychosocial support and raising awareness in the society. In the context of our society, it's very useful and clever to integrate faith perspectives while any discourse on gender justice is taking place. It's really very effective to transform the society because of the very nature of our society, the way it is built. Many panelists have spoken ahead of me, and I cannot match the information and experience they have shared on this topic very exclusively. But in the context of our society, I will, as it was mentioned by many panelists, I would say that the first step towards empowerment, be it for men or women, is through education and skill. Awareness and skill leads to economic empowerment, which is a key for social and political empowerment. It is heartening that Pakistan has made important strides towards realizing and promoting human rights, particularly the women's rights. In addition to the executive, we have established legal framework and independent human rights institutions to supervise the overall state of human rights in our country. We have an environment of, we have a robust civil society which keeps a check on the government and also on the society for the protection of women's rights, children's rights, minority rights, and all human rights across the board. Our institutions are playing their role. Madam Agha was already with us. The National Commission for Human Rights, the National Commission for Women's Rights, Commission for Children's Rights, they are bringing change in the governance landscape. Like in other professions, women's presence in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have also increased over last few years. Now more lady officers are rising to the positions of leadership, and we have currently the second lady Foreign Secretary, Madam Amna Baloch, in the Foreign Ministry. The speakers ahead of me have spoken on various aspects of gender justice. We acknowledge and the issues that our society is facing. These figures and facts are not enviable, and we acknowledge that we are faced with huge challenges towards reaching an optimal level where we can proudly claim that we have been able to provide gender justice to all the segments of the society. However, the positivity is there that more and more women are mainstreaming in different professions and different fields of life. More awareness and courage is being imparted in the society to discuss the women issues more openly than before. We have to continue these efforts and to promote open dialogue in our society to break the false ceilings. We may allow our girls to be educated. We may allow our women the freedom of choice to join any profession or to make any other decision about their lives. We have to train our sons how to respect and support women. While government has the primary responsibility about transforming a society needs collective efforts of NGOs, civil society, and social groups. Through our collective efforts as a society, we can hope that we can make our communities inclusive and provide justice for every individual. I again thank you for making me part of this important.
Mr. Mohammad Yahya, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Pakistan. He has a vast experience, and now he's going to address the audience on today's occasion. Please put your hands together for Mr. Yahya.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for Islamic Relief for inviting me. I want to recognize the presence of the ambassador, chief guests, esteemed dignitaries, and my UN colleagues who are also here today. Thank you very much. I'm really honored, and the country representative made sure I was here, and I was really delighted to participate in this important discussion. You probably know that the UN, the development arm of the UN is here to support government of Pakistan achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And if I was to reduce the key ingredients of what the sustainable development will look like in Pakistan and how Pakistan can achieve, is about empowering women. And if we fail on this task, we will fail on the SDGs. It's that simple, and it's that direct. If you think about peace components of the Sustainable Development Goals, or if you think about economic development and reduction of poverty, if you think about population control, everything comes back to the issue of women having both economic and social rights. Gender equality and women's empowerment are just not objectives, they are imperative for the SDGs. They are the core of the work of the United Nations globally and locally. One of the 5 priorities we work here with the government of Pakistan is also gender. Is an area that the government identified as a key ingredient for its own development goals. There are obstacles in Pakistan, and I think many of the eminent speakers here have touched on those obstacles. And one of the key obstacles is the misuse of religion and the misuse of culture as an excuse to depress, isolate, and weaken women's and girls' participation. Empowering women is not just about addressing inequalities, it's also about unleashing potential, driving progress and prosperity for all. For this, we must ensure that every woman and girl have access to quality education that is their right. And here in Pakistan, the numbers was mentioned by our colleagues from UNICEF are staggering in terms of girls who are out of school. UN agencies here support many of the initiatives, and today you've heard from UN Women, UNICEF, and others on the work the UN does to enable girls and women to have the kind of access and opportunities that they need. It covers issues around livelihood, access to financing, and issues around leadership and how women can take a more leadership role in the country. We also work on protecting women and girls from issues around gender-based violence, and our efforts range from establishing safe spaces for survivors to advocating for stronger legal frameworks that ensure accountability of the perpetrators and protection for the survivors. In Pakistan, like many other countries, cultural practices and social norms that create gender injustice are often misrepresented as a religious teachings. And today I'm really happy to see the professor, our eminent professor here, point out how religion is misused or misinterpreted for other motives. It is therefore critical we've distinguished between religion and social norms. In reality, Islam, like any other religion, upholds the principle of equality, dignity, and justice for all individuals, regardless of their gender. Quranic verses and hadith promotes the rights and respect of women. Religious leaders and institutions can play a pivotal role, and I'm glad that the Islamic Relief is able to take a faith-based approach to this important topic. Pakistan has always shown a great commitment to women's rights. We think about all the challenges we have. We sometimes forget what the achievements Pakistan and the progress Pakistan has made around this specific issue. Some of the examples: in 1973, the Pakistani constitution guaranteed non-discrimination on the basis of sex. 1995, Pakistan elected a female prime minister. And 2016, it also became the first country to adopt the Sustainable Development, which has gender a key component of the goals. So there are successes, there are lights, and I think, and here you have a lot of well-accomplished women made in Pakistan, also shows that there is opportunity and things that we can build on moving forward. It's evident that partnership and localization are essential. The United Nations remains committed to working along the government and civil society organizations that are here today. Faith has a power to inspire, unite, and transform for a better world based on principles, equality, and justice. I am really delighted the work that Islamic Relief does, and I want you to know that the United Nations stands behind the civil society organization, Islamic Relief, and the government of Pakistan. Thank you very much. Shukriya. Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Yahya, for sharing your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will again proceed with our shield distribution ceremony to acknowledge and appreciate the contributions of our speakers with gratitude. For that, I would now again request Mr. Yahya to join us on stage to distribute these shields among the speakers. And Mr. Shirazi, you are requested to kindly join Mr. Yahya on stage. So first of all, I would like to invite Ambassador Farhat Aisha to join us on stage to receive her token of appreciation. Next, I would like to request Mr. Andrew Bowden, Group Head of Open Societies and Effective Institutions, to join on stage. All right, so he's not here with us anymore. He has already left. So I would now request Mr. Asif Shirazi. Okay. All right, so now I would request Mr. Asif Shirazi to present a token shield to Mr. Yahya. Thank you so much. I request Mr. Yahya and Mr. Shirazi to stay on this stage for a group photo, and I request all our dignitaries, panelists, our speakers to join on stage for a group photo session. Thank you, Mr. Yahya. You may now take your seat. Mr. Shirazi, I request you to kindly join us on stage to deliver the vote of thanks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's my privilege and honor to deliver this concluding vote of thanks, to say a huge thank you for all the people who participated here. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Mr. Yahya, Muhammad Yahya. So he also remember now my name, you know. So, and then of course with the Mr. Andrew, who has just left because he had another meeting, Ms. Rabia Javeria Agha, her contribution for the cause is great, and then the panel members including Sasha, Fahmida, Saman, Dr. Qibla Yas Sahab, and my respected sister Barira Hanif, and also the representative who came from the French Embassy, Italian Embassy, as well as from USAID, my fellow international NGOs colleagues, OCHA colleagues here. And then also thank you, Sabine, the Master of Ceremony, for facilitating such dynamic and meaningful exchange of ideas, and also to all the participants who came on a very short notice and gave us the honor to attend this event. And of course, a huge thank you to the organizing team of Islamic Relief Pakistan and our partners for their tireless efforts to make it more meaningful. And the most important is thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for enabling us to gather here today and for guiding us in addressing these critical issues of gender justice, education, and domestic violence through the lens of faith and humanity. So I hope that as we move forward from today, inspire us all to continue advocating for equity, justice, and the empowerment of women and girls in Pakistan and beyond. Once again, thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon with a nice lunch and a networking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shirazi, for wrapping up the event on a positive and encouraging note. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your participation. Please join us for lunch and networking as we continue to foster meaningful connections. Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Ladies and gentlemen, the lunch is served outside in the lobby as well, so please help yourselves.